Welcome back to the Upside Down Health Podcast. Today's guest is Ethan Hill, and I literally just met Ethan last week, but he had a very strong first impression on me, and I immediately said that I had to get him on the podcast the very next week. So there isn't a whole lot of massive introduction here because I don't really know Ethan that well. But I can tell you that for a young guy, he seems to have a lot of wisdom and he has some very interesting experience with certain disciplines, certain habits, and he seems very wise beyond his years. So, Ethan, thanks for coming on today.
I'm glad to be here. Thank you for buttering me up to start.
I like to do that with all my guests and then just like bring them down real quick. But no, I'm just kidding.
Dive into it.
So we want to focus today on like porn and no fap, which for a lot of people just hearing those words on a podcast is like, what the hell is this kid talking about? So tell us a little bit about what experience you've had with, both of those things. How did you start thinking that maybe that wasn't the most healthy way to live your life?
Yeah, so like you said in the intro, me and you sort of clicked straight away from the start. And I think why we both started talking was because we were talking about how we'd been changing our lives for the better sort of thing. And we both sort of clicked that it was probably actually like nofap and making that choice, making that commitment to, I think, even just the realization that it's something that you shouldn't be doing, like not even necessarily being successful at it, but the moment you start attempting to or realizing the downsides that you're going through whilst being on porn and like doing that to yourself, it's, I think that's a really big starting point. So I guess the reason I was keen to hop on this today is because a lot of people don't even realize that, like, how negative it really is, and how like that choice, the repercussions of that, people don't even realize. So I guess I was just happy that there was someone else out there like putting it out to people that we got to stop.
Yeah, it's hard to say it so bluntly that this is bad and this is something we shouldn't do, but that's like the feeling I've had once I've once I've gotten rid of those habits, and it's like you really do want to express it to the world, but there aren't a lot of people who are living that way. So it definitely is why I think we connected. And we were discussing how there's kind of like this energetic component to all this. So I know you call it like chi, right? There's
Mhm.
like I think your Instagram was like energy. So
That's my gym. Yeah, that's where I work.
oh, that's awesome. What is chi energy and like how does that relate to this?
So I think the actually it was NoFap that I started learning about all of this, really, because at least for me, you sort of hear chi maybe in like uh, random Asian movies, or just like it comes up like this mystical thing sort of thing. But basically, your chi is just your life force energy, and the it can be quantifiable, unquantifiable, but basically, you have it because it's your energy, right? So you can, if you've got no energy, your chi is low, and everything cultivates it. Well, there's lots of different ways that you cultivate it, like with your
Hmm.
breathing, your thinking, your moving, your eating, hydrating, sleeping, like that can determine your chi. And so I think for me, it's still something I'm learning, but it's definitely realizing that I think why it comes into the conversation we're having is because when you uh, I don't know if you've heard the term spill your seed. It's just
Mm.
the ultimate drain of your life force, right?
Hmm. Do you care to elaborate more about that?
So I think one way that's puts it right, one way that puts it, you've got a tricky question. Um, Something that puts it slightly bluntly is um, uh, it's even still like tough talking to you and just expressing it because it's not something
No,
people talk about very openly.
exactly. And like honestly, the reason this is episode one, like I want to start a series where we bring on people who have this experience and we just start talking about it. Like even if people don't have the experience and they're just like gonna tune in for a call or something, like these are things that we should be talking about as guys. Like it shouldn't be a taboo topic, but it is
Mm,
because it feels awkward because porn has been this thing that we've like hid under the covers for so long. Like I mean, there are some. Apparently, there's guys who like send porn to their friends and stuff. But like mine was never like that. It was always like I'm gonna sneak away and do this. So it was like this very secretive thing. So it feels like it's very awkward to express it, even
mm.
when you're talking in an openly like we know this is a good environment. Like I'm not gonna shame you for what you're talking about, but yeah, that's what I'm trying to create here, and I think it's going to be really powerful to have this kind of dialogue.
Yeah, thank you. That sort of puts it back into context for me. And like you were saying, it can be a pretty hidden thing. Like even friends, like close guy friends, aren't talking to other guy friends about it, or like the other side of the spectrum, people sending it to each other and stuff. I think it becomes it's almost like a shared shame, and so sometimes you laugh to deal with awkwardness. It can go like I
Hmm.
know friends where it goes all the way to the other side, and they sort of have to joke about it, or like they brag or joke about how frequently they do it, sort of thing, because then like internally they know that it's something wrong, but their way of dealing with the shame is, hey, if we're all doing it, like it's not that bad, let's just take the piss out of it and pretend.
Hmm. It would almost be like how, sometimes obese people kind of make fat jokes about themselves.
Yes, yeah. And
So
I
it's a
think
they're like they're like shameful of it, but they don't want to admit it, so they kind of make humor out of it.
mm, yeah, and I think that's sort of that's like a false layer of conversation, because the real one that needs to happen, and like the genuine connection, like saying to someone, hey, I've kind of noticed I don't feel good about myself after I do this. Like when that when that's missing, and when you can't connect with friends like that, like I know a lot of mates, it's not necessarily just about this, but about other things, like just feeling low in general or anything. When that closeness and that bond between men, like divine masculinity, you're not truly expressing what you are and how you feel. It's not about never feeling down. It's you can feel down, or you can feel disappointed in yourself or not like yourself. It's actually about expressing that and putting your true self forward, and no one really does that. And so no wonder we're blocked in this area, because it's just not happening anywhere.
Hmm. So how has like that that was a really cool rant right there. I mean, it wasn't really a rant, but like I really like what you said about like expressing yourself. And something interesting about like the whole no fap idea is that when you keep this energy for yourself and you don't, put it on a tissue paper and flush it down the toilet, like when that strong force stays in your body, it's not enough to just do that because there's actually a lot of people that do that for religious reasons or there's all these more so I'd say maybe I don't know what the statistics are but I would guess maybe like 15 to 20% of guys aren't they're not jacking off, they're not masturbating.
Mhm.
But there's this component to this chi, this Tai Chi, and like, I mean, it's not necessarily, you don't have to call it chi, right? Like, that's just a word. Um,
Mhm.
every culture has a word for it. It's this idea that energy, like the universe is energy. Tesla said,
Mhm.
think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration, and you'll learn the secrets of the universe. So there's, I guess, this idea of like transmuting your energy. So Napoleon Hill talks about it in Think and Grow Rich as like the 10th staple principle of all successful people. And it's, Leonardo da Vinci did it, and Michael, I don't know exactly the names of all these people. Steve Jobs is on the list. Michelangelo, I think, one of the artists, and all these people who realize the power of sexual energy, how strong
Mhm.
it is. But like I said, it's not enough to just keep it, because you actually have to move it around, or else it will kind of get blocked into place and become stagnant, and then you won't be expressing it. I was trying to figure out how I was even getting to this point, but it comes back to that expressing yourself. And so if that energy is stuck in you and it's flowing, down to like the lower chakras of your body, and you don't start creating things in your life, and you just sit back, you sit at your job that you hate, and you just keep chugging along, and you're not being active, then it's not nothing's going to happen, but it's when people start using that energy that things start to change. So what's your experience with this idea of, you know I guess you call it moving energy around and not letting it get stagnant?
Mm. Yeah, that was a really interesting tangent from you there. I think you kind of it's almost like a positive feedback loop, right? You can't do one without the other. I don't think so. I was thinking about it the other day after we talked about it, right? And so in uh, I'm gonna probably go on a bit of a tangent here, but so in the universe, there's never a vacuum. So if you take something away, something always has to fill it, right? So like you think about whenever something comes to an end in your life. So someone moves away, like you end one job, another job comes in. So there's always has to be something to fill that space. So I don't think you can be successful at like, whoa, so when you're watching porn, you're releasing your energy. And I don't think you can hold that energy. I think it has to go to somewhere else. And so I know there is a lot of different ways of like recirculating it within your body. And I know that gets into like Mantak Chia and ancient like Taoism and tantric practices. But
Mm-hmm.
I think the well, ultimately, you're trying to convert sexual energy into higher energy. And so that could just be sexual energy to physical energy. And then I think the ultimate goal is that into spiritual energy. And I think that's the learning process that we're both on. But for me, I think once you learn how to use the sexual energy for your physical power, like that's what gets you doing podcasts and starting a YouTube channel and
Mm-hmm.
in Uncommon Success Education. It's if you're if you're not, yeah, so the positive feedback loop, right? So you aren't going to go out and start these amazing things and put your energy into them if you don't have it in the first place. But then if you're losing it, you can't go give it. And then as soon as you're giving it, you have to continue that. So it's all just, I think, where you choose to funnel it. And it's funneling your time a lot, honestly, as well. Like people are very committed to their masturbation and porn watching practices. Like I think I think for a lot of young guys, that's like the only experience of consistency is like I know my mates, it's once a day is light. Like that's someone who does not do it often. And so
Wow.
you think about that frequency and that regularity, like no wonder you're not committing to your goals and you're not achieving stuff that you need consistency with, because look where all of your consistency is going right now. It's going, it's being flushed away, literally flushed away. And so, yeah, and so as soon as that flushing away stops, the consistency has to be somewhere else, right? And so the consistency turns into more more positive habits.
Hmm. That's such an interesting way of putting it, the consistency framework. And I remember when I was first exposed to this, like, overstimulation of guys in high school who are masturbating like 2, 3 times a day. I was like, geez, like, I mean, you'd see it on the Wolf of Wall Street movie, and McConaughey's, the scene where he's pounding his chest, and he's, um, you know, DiCaprio says he does it 3 days a week, and he says those are light numbers, and that it is pretty insane what you're doing if you're doing it that often. Like, there are a lot of people who do not buy into this concept of no fap, and I totally understand. Like, I'm not trying to convince anybody that it's, this is real, this is magical. I don't really care what you do. I do. I want to help people, but there are a lot of people who to promote like a healthy masturbation. So I'm not against that idea either. Even like guys like Mantak, Chia, they say there are healthier ways to do it. The point is that there should be more awareness about what's going on, because if you're doing it 3 times a day, there's a good chance you're really not mindful of it to begin with. It's probably just a very consistent habit that you form that you don't even really think about. And it's honestly probably not even giving you that much pleasure. Like, if you're doing it 3 times a day, I can't imagine it's even feeling that good. It probably is getting to a point of pain, right?
Mm. Yeah, I know mates that are at that level, and it's just it's it's unintentional at that point. Like they say to me, I wasn't planning on, but then I'm like going to bed and they're trying to like count up how many times they did during the day, and it doesn't feel any better. And it's, well, this gets into how it's like addictive, and I think most people don't realize that they are addicted to it. And yeah, this was one of the key things for me. Paul Chek, his definition of addiction, he's a holistic health practitioner. He just he defines it really clearly. He said an addiction is anything that you repeatedly do that doesn't bring you the results that you want. And
Mm.
that's just a really simple way of looking at a lot of addictions in life, but also getting into like the the chemistry of why you're addicted to watching porn. I think the I I don't quite remember where I had this. I think I can find it though. Is so when you're on morphine, your dopamine levels are increased 200%. When you're on cocaine, your dopamine levels are increased 300%. And when the ejaculation occurs, for that instant, dopamine levels are at 300% of your normal range. And
Mm.
so it's it's blunting your dopamine receptors, because when they're increased to that high of a stimulus, like, so here's your normal range, but then when you're going this high above it, like your body's sensitivity has to bring it down, because it doesn't want you to experience things out of the range that you're supposed to experience things within. So it kills off dopamine receptors. So then those things that used to make you a little bit happy, well, they just made you less happy, because you've got less dopamine receptors to actually be made happy by.
Mm.
And so you keep chasing and chasing and chasing a higher high. Like someone in Uncommon Success that we were talking to, I think it was, I'm not sure, might not say his name, don't know if he wants that.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sure they won't mind.
Think it was Jason was saying like when he was he didn't mention what drugs he used to do, but
Yeah,
he was mentioned like it went side and side, like hand in hand, masturbation and his drugs, because he
yeah.
just viewed it as another high. That's what it is.
Hmm. Yeah, it's interesting to bring up the dopamine stuff. Um, I've noticed that personally, like the 300%, that whole idea is very accurate. That, and a lot of people even compare the brain on porn with the brain on cocaine, and it surprisingly looks a lot similar. So there's some really cool images out there that break down the neuroscience of what's going on. And that's not necessarily just the ejaculation. I know the porn adds another layer onto
Mm,
the addiction that makes it a lot worse. So,
mm,
in my opinion, the first step would be eliminating the porn, starting to actually be more in tune with your own body, I think, because
mm-hmm,
a lot of the times with this addiction, guys actually can't perform when they actually want to go have sex. They literally like have gotten so used to this like their hand that they don't even know what it feels like to like reproduce the way that humans have been reproducing for millions of years. So it seems like a logical first step to say, okay, let's take a look at this porn addiction on how are we going to tackle this? What's going on here? Like, how is this affecting my psychology? Even how you view women. You know, if you're now there's different kinds of porn, but if you're watching two women, say, or you're watching two people, it doesn't even have to be two women, but you're telling your brain that you're the guy sitting in the corner watching people have sex. Like, and then if you are actually watching the point of view videos, you're telling your body that you are a freaking stud who's having sex with amazing women. And so I think we talked about this the other night within our conversation was this idea that you're communicating with your body something when you do this. There's this subconscious level of communication. So when I go watch porn, I tell and say I'm doing the point of view stuff, like I'm basically telling my body that, look, I've made it. Like my genes are gonna reproduce. These women are beautiful. We're gonna have some really good looking kids. You don't have to worry about making me any more attractive. Don't worry about me doing any like cool stuff anymore. I'm just gonna kind of like relax, sit in a corner. That's what you tell your body. And I mean, that's like a philosophical kind of perception on this, but what would you rather be telling your body? Like the no fap route and avoiding porn, what that does is it tells your body, look, I'm not getting anybody right now. We're not reproducing anytime soon. Could you kind of help me out here? Like, could
yeah, that
you
you're still
brainstorm?
in the hunt, you're still like in the game.
You're
Yeah,
in the game.
you're
You're a
striving for
kid.
something.
You're like a young guy in like if we take it back to ancestors, you're just a kid in the tribe who's trying to learn from his elders, learn the wisdom, become like the real man and learn how his body works and kind of like start to master this body we've been gifted with. But
Mm.
you get into a dangerous waters when you don't go down that way. So what do you think about that whole rant that I just went through?
Yeah, I was actually it brought up something I was keen to hop on. So earlier, this is when I stumbled a bit earlier. I was saying so when you spill your seed, when you ejaculate, that's something that, so if we go back in time, like thinking about, well, this also gets into, I think you'll probably have stumbled across it, like Mantak, Chia, separating ejaculation and orgasm. And
Yep.
but if you think about like ejaculation, what you're putting out is supposed to create life. So you're literally draining your body of something powerful enough to create children. and I mean only one eventually makes it, but you put out enough to create thousands of children. And so that's something that we would have only ever been doing if you believe our ancestors were monogamous, like 9 8 months at best, sort of thing. And so when you're doing it 3 or 4 times a day, like you are the king. You've reached, because that's what every animal's base desire is: continue the genetic line, continue my species. And so if you've continued your species successfully 4 times every single day, why would anything else matter to you at like the lowest level? And sure, you could still say, oh, I've got other things to do, like that it still mattered to me. But at your lowest level, you wouldn't. And the lowest level, all the higher levels have to come from that. So if you've drained out the bottom, you can't build anything because there's no foundation. And so yeah, like that's part of it, is the dopamine mental effect of, well shit, nothing seems as good to me anymore because the receptors literally aren't there. But it's also the deep, like I don't even know what the I don't even know how the body would read or like sense this, but that deep level where you're saying, I've just made 4 children today, my genes are gonna be all over the planet at some point. Like nothing would compare to that. And so again, talk about like the feedback mechanism. Like you've got, so if you've got that level of satisfaction there, it's a false satisfaction, but you've got that contentment of having spread your genes all over the place, then you can't, if that's where all your happiness and that's where all your success has come from, it's not going to be anywhere else, because you've placed all of it into this one thing. And then as soon as you start dissipating that, so as soon as it's once a day, once a week, once a month, this success, well, it just has to go somewhere else, because yeah, there's no vacuums in the universe. Like you were falsely succeeding here, and you were telling your body you've already had the success. Now that you're not having that, it goes somewhere else. And that's through your better choices once you're off of it, but that's why it transitions.
Hmm. How old are you?
18.
Jeez. When did you find this stuff?
I think it's interesting because I think it's just, it's like one thing leads to the next. And I might have seen like one YouTube video that says do it less, and then I go months without even thinking about that sort of thing. But piece after piece, like I don't know, probably just, I think even this like proper nofap is never doing it, but even doing it like only once a week, or when I probably, like the more I decreased the frequency of it, probably the more into it I got. And so, but I guess the turning point or starting point would probably be 15.
Wow. And then, so you've been kind of on and off of it for like 3 years, like messing around with different ideas.
Yeah, I think a lot of it was, well, just straight up being addicted to it, right? And um I said to you on our call the other week, you can't remove an addiction, you can only replace it. So all that consistency and energy you're putting into it has to go somewhere else. And I think initially I didn't really have anything else to funnel it into, but now that like I I have my dream life, I've got my dream job, I'm a personal trainer, and I love what I do every second I'm awake. I have a dream to funnel my energy into. Like now it's not even a challenge for me anymore, because I know where I'm putting my energy and I know what I want. But initially, if you're quitting it for the sake of quitting it, like you always, yeah, I think you always have to and should quit for the sake of quitting, but it can be hard at the start if you don't know where you want this new energy to go to. And but you can't find out your passions and your dreams and realize them if you don't quit already. So I think that's one of the that was probably my personal struggle a bit more, is where does it lead to? And I guess that where it leads to is what you find out once you stop, right? Like you wouldn't have your podcast and you wouldn't be an ATG like online coach, and you wouldn't have even thought of these things whilst you were still masturbating and watching porn. So it wasn't even visible at the start, but now it's obviously where you were being taken to do. It's obviously what all that energy was for.
Hmm. Yeah, it reminds me of Ben's principle when he talks about you get what you put your energy on. And you think you said something very, very similar to that, right? You now have all this energy. What are you going to do with it? And we have all these people complaining that they can't achieve their goals. They're stuck at a job they don't like. They don't know what their path in life is or whatever. Like, I mean, I felt like that a year and a half ago. Like, and I still kind of don't know what I'm doing, but like I'm confident that I'm figuring it out. Yeah, when I started, like, I just found it on some random YouTube video, and the first kid that mentioned it, it was like, did he just say don't do it? Like, I was like, what? And then I played around with it. I think I made it like 7 days the first time I tried it. Um, then went back, and then after that, I just committed, and I haven't looked back. And that was my last semester in college. So going into a accounting degree that I knew I didn't want to be an accountant. Like, I literally known that for years in college, that I wasn't going to use my degree, but I had no balls to actually drop out because I didn't know what the hell I was going to do. So I just kept sticking with this degree. And then once I graduated, like you said, like I started expressing this energy because I had to. And
Yeah.
it's taken me on a path that is like I can't even look like when you look at yourself and where you were, it's a totally different person. I could never imagine myself like speaking to cameras and having podcasts and even like just doing any of this stuff. And what's interesting that you mentioned, and it's something we've both noticed, is that it's this principle of like that. I hate to use this, but like energy just seems like the most fitting word because like look, I think we've said it probably 100 times already. Like, and a lot of people hear the word energy and they kind of think like it's like a woo woo kind of. Like it's like, oh, they're just energy guys, or you know what I mean? So I don't know what else to say. Okay, it, everything's vibrating. Like we are just bundles of energy. I'm not saying there's no soul and there's no spirit and there's no God or anything like that. I'm just saying when you break things down from what we can understand, like we are these energy bundles, and so we have both experienced it that the energy it's it like pulls you into directions that you can't even explain what's happening. Like I have these hunches where the energy is telling you like go this way. So my question is for you, how is this like you've you're 18 and you're speaking like you're like a 7-year old who has all this wisdom, like I'm dead serious. So people like don't it, you've only discovered this a couple of years ago, but I've heard from people that like the younger you find this kind of path, the more powerful it can become. And my question is, like, you mentioned the job, you mentioned you've overcome your knee pain, which you haven't even discussed, but like how else is this impacting you? And I don't want to necessarily get into like these are all the benefits of no fap. Like we're not making that kind of video. if you get in this for the benefits, you're in the wrong game. Like you're you're not supposed to just hop. I heard a guy call it like a cargo cult. So all the guys on YouTube, they're just like a part of this no fap cult who are like, oh, I want to get the women attraction and I want to feel like better about myself. And it's like, what are you doing? Like, I get it, but you're almost like if you're in this to like get more women so you could have more like more ejaculation and like I mean maybe that's okay for some people like personally and I think you probably feel a similar way is like if you're a young guy and you don't really know what direction your life is heading and you're interested in something like this like clearly something's drawing you here that might be an inclination that like you it's not necessarily time to go find a wife right now. Like maybe you need to put yourself first and find that path so then you can be a better provider down the line. And I know I asked you a question and then talked on top of it. So what have you experienced with NoFap? Like what does it feel like? How is it impacting your life aside for, the new job and all that stuff?
I loved that whole tangent there. I need to go back on a couple of things.
Okay.
So you were talking about how people perceive using the word energy, like straight away they go, oh, these guys are woo woo. Or
Yep.
then you talked about like people coming into the nofap space wanting like more girls or sort of thing.
Yep.
And both of those, so we're saying they're the wrong mentality, but that's the mentality that porn has given them. Like, so you are like when people dismiss like talking about vibration or being on a higher vibration, it's because you've been dragged down to the level you're at. You've expelled all of your energy, so you have nothing to build on. So you can't see up the mountain. You can only see like back down. And so a lot of people like come into NoFap for the wrong reasons. Like I think I did as well. I think it was because I said I stumbled upon a random video YouTube video. I would have it would have probably been on like one of those channels talking about how to get girls, and then like it was just a recommended afterwards, like by a similar YouTuber, just NoFap. But like that would have been it for me too. And I think you are drawn to that. I think we're like any challenge you're presented with in your life is because that it like a challenge is just an opportunity for accelerated learning. Because when everything's a breeze, like it's a breeze. You're not leveling up. It's only like someone that gets massively knocked down, that's where the comeback is from. There's no comeback if you've been succeeding the whole time. That has to be the obstacle for you to hit first. And so, yeah, forgot where I was sort of going. But yeah, it's like you can come into it for the wrong reason, but you can't know that it was the wrong reason at that point yet. It's like it's understandable that you came into it for the wrong reason because you've been doing something to your body that makes you not physically able to see the right reasons. So
And honestly, like I don't know if it's right or wrong. Like this is something I've been learning from Paul Council and Keegan and in the school of learning is like uncommon success and all that. That right and wrong is not necessarily the best framework to observe things. It could just be like, a more appropriate path, a more effective path. Because when you
hmm,
get in this like right wrong mentality, you're kind of starting to think no fap is right and masturbation is wrong. And it's like we don't even want to say, like ATG training is right because it's not. It's just a way to do things. So, but I think I like what you're hitting at there that like the point is there it wasn't wrong for us both to get involved because we maybe thought there would be some benefits. Like that's obviously why most kids are gonna get involved with this because they are vibrating at that low level where they're not thinking higher of themselves. Porn has
It's how it
dragged
had to
them
be
down.
at the time. It was appropriate for the time. And
Hmm.
like you think about any mistake in your life, and now that you can blatantly see it was a mistake, well, you couldn't see it was a mistake before. Like I know in relationships, right? Like I've done or said things that are obviously the wrong thing to have done or said,
Hmm.
but it was only because that they were such a wrong thing and that they led to like a breakup or a failure that I realized they were wrong. I wouldn't have done them at the time if I already knew they were going to lead me to failure. Like you have to realize that. And
Yep.
so whatever whatever is appropriate at the time, you can get into it like through that. Sure, like that's just it is how it is. Like it has to be. There's no other way than the way it's going to be.
What kind of tips do you have for people who are like hearing us rant and they're like, "Hey, I kind of want to join in on this party. How can I get involved? What what kind of obstacles are going to come up for people if they do give it a try?"
I think talking to people is a massive one because it's the hardest one, definitely, but the most beneficial one because like even I've I bring it up with my mates and there's some truths or there's some expressions of words that when you say to another person, like they just they might not have ever thought of it before, but they've had that feeling, and it's not until it was put out there for them that they get to experience it. Like I know what if I just say like hey, if you're ejaculating 4 times a day, your body thinks you're king of the world, why would it need to do anything else? Then they're like, oh yeah, whenever I do it, I don't really do anything else in the day. And it it starts. And then I've had mates that kind of click like that and they just they come back to me and they're like, "Oh, I haven't done it for a week." And I'm like, "And you feel better?" And they're like, "Yeah, who would have thought?" I'm like, it's obvious once you get into it, but just having people to talk to about it. And I think, yeah, I guess the real reason I'd say talk to people about it is because probably the biggest reason why it's an issue currently is because no one is talking about it. Like it was us as a people that let it become so taboo, and it's us as a people that can undo that, and no one has to silently suffer with it. Like the only reason it is it's your choice. Like this ends when we say so, because it's false. And I think we're both, or like we're almost saying that from a higher perspective, because whilst you're in the thick of it, like you can't realize that. It's not until after you do something, it's not until after you conquer the fear that you realize how simple the fear was. Like it's that
Hmm.
it's that jumping out of an airplane. Like once you've done it, like I'm terrified of doing that, but I know once I've done it, I've I'll be like, yeah, that wasn't so bad. Or just you you jump off a, a diving board to go into the pool, and it was absolutely terrifying the first time you did it, but then it never scares you again. Like it's just breaking down that false fear. Like you'll find when you talk to people about it, they respond, and because they've known that at a deep level, and they're just waiting for someone else to be there. Like you can be the person that wakes up what they've always known, and people respect that. Like there's not enough of that, and that's like that's true masculinity. Like that's genuinely expressing yourself, putting yourself forward, putting your mistakes forward. Like just if you're gonna fuck up, if you're gonna make mistakes, at least you're doing them with someone else. At least like there's there's people to learn with and laugh with, and everything's about other people. Like, do it for yourself, but do it, well, I think you get past the point of doing it for yourself. Like, me and you have both been doing it for long enough that we want to help other people do it now. And I think a lot of like no fap YouTubers, they get their success and they realize it's because of it. So they have to talk about it as well. Like, it literally gives you a higher perspective to the point where you can't not share it with other people. Like, you see the
Hmm.
power, and you also see the power in helping other people.
I just want to like firmly plant my pole in the ground and say, like, Ethan Hill is going to be doing some really cool shit in about 5 years if he's not already doing it. Uh, why don't you end this podcast by putting a historical timestamp on what your goals are, what you were actually putting your energy on. So in 5 years, when people come back to like, shit, he said he was going to do that, and it's actually worked. So let us know what you're thinking about. Where is your like, what are you visualizing these days? What have you been putting, your energy, your thoughts into? And then after you answer that, why don't you tell people what your Instagram is, and then like if you have any other places to contact you, they can reach out there.
Yeah, my personal mission statement is to help people find their power physically, financially, sexually, mentally, and spiritually. By 2030, I plan to have an education system. I don't know if it's going to be a school, a series of schools. Like, the ultimate dream is to replace the current schooling system we have now, right? So I'd like, right now I'm kind of doing it one on one. I'm helping people find their power physically by personal training, but I want, like, right now the default that you get born into, like the default schooling that 90% of people will go to, that's not enough for me. That's not helping them find their personal power mentally, physically, financially, spiritually, and sexually. Like, we are divine beings, and we're here for something pretty damn incredible, and we're conditioned out of that. So I want the base conditioning, like the conditioning that everyone has, so that this kind of conversation is just normal. Like, I'm going to keep doing that at a bigger and a bigger scale. And
Mm-hmm.
the ultimate point to start that is, that's what every school is. Like, it's genuine learning and expression. So that's 2030 or near abouts. But
Love it. Love it.
yeah, so just building towards that goal, and building to help more and more people find that personal power. Oh
Well,
yeah, and so Instagram is Climb That Hill, YouTube is Climb That Hill as well. And i'm I just want to help people the best I can. I'm going to be doing it in every single way: podcasts, YouTube, books, anything, like anything and everything. And so just, I just want to help people. Yeah, that's what I'm doing.
climb that hill.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
How'd
my
you come
last
up with
name's
that one?
Hills. Uh, Last name's Hill, and I was just looking for an Instagram username, and then I I came across, I don't know why, but I just did Climb That Hill, like reach for your dreams, like keep climbing. And
Yeah.
then my mates started ironically calling me Climb That Hill and taking the piss out of it. But the more they did it, the more I was kind of like, I could
This
get
is
used to
cool.
that. I
Yeah.
kind of like that. Yeah.
Well,
So I think that's going to be it for me.
well, this has been a legendary podcast. I think a lot of people are going to get a lot out of it. So thanks for coming on. I think you're going to be a returning guest on the in the No Fap series, whatever we're doing with this. I think it's if this is episode number one, it's a good sign that we are heading in a good direction for the future, the men of our generation. So I just want to personally thank you for like being open about this, because as we discussed, like no one's talking about this, and it actually does take guts to be open about doing this, but maybe it doesn't have to take guts. Maybe it could just become something that we always, we can bring up. I'm I'm obviously not going to be walking to my family parties and being like, "Hey guys," but um, yeah, it can be more normal, especially in guy conversations, and hopefully we'll see that whether or not you're involved building this community, but we're gonna build to, I think we'll be seeing 10, 15, 20 guys hopping on these calls, and we can just talk about this stuff and talk about how we're feeling about it and all that stuff because we've lost this connection with like masculinity and sharing emotions and stuff as men. So in that long rant, I think it's pretty fitting to end on a rant there. Thank you so much for coming on and yeah, if someone's listening to this, just reach out to Ethan and I think he'd be happy to have a conversation with you. He'd probably hop on a Zoom call with you.
Yeah, we'll get it started however it needs to get started, however it happens.
Epic. All right. Have a good one, everybody.